Hi everybody, and welcome to the Science and Culture part of Unit 6. Now when you are sick, you go to a place called a hospital. And in hospitals, doctors and nurses help cure people of their sicknesses. But do you know that hospitals are different all around the world? An ambulance. An ambulance is a vehicle used to transport a patient or a sick person to the hospital. Sometimes even a staff from the hospital can use an ambulance to come to a patient's house to help them. Many different vehicles can be used as an ambulance, such as trucks, cars, bikes, and helicopters. Every country has their own type of ambulance, along with colors and symbols. For example, in Switzerland, the van ambulances are yellow, but in other countries, the van ambulances could be red or white. In Israel, medical staff even have scooters so that they can drive to the patient's house to check up on them and make sure they are okay. Very interesting one is a bike ambulance in London, which doctors or medical staff can use to quickly get to an urban area to check up or help somebody in need. In Northern Ireland, an air ambulance is sometimes used to reach patients and bring them to the nearest hospital. So sometimes the patients could be far away in the countryside or in some remote areas. That is when an air ambulance may be used. Now, when you are in an accident, or you have an emergency, or you see an accident or see an emergency, it's important to let the emergency services know about what's going on so that they can come and help you. Now here in Vietnam, the number for the emergency services, the ambulance, is 115. But that number is not the same for every country in the world. Every country has their own version of an emergency number. For example, in America, the number for the emergency services is 911. In the UK, it's 999. In Japan, it's 119. In Australia, it's 000. Now, what do doctors wear at hospitals? What do nurses wear at hospitals? And what do people wear at hospitals? When we think about doctors, we think about the white coat that they wear. But scrubs is another type of clothing that people in hospitals wear sometimes too. What are scrubs? Scrubs are protective clothing which doctors, nurses, and others are required to wear in the operating room. However, you can now see doctors and nurses and sometimes other people wearing this type of protective clothing outside the operating room too. The color of scrubs before in the past was usually blue, but that color has changed through time. For example, if a doctor is dealing with small children or young people, their scrubs can be different colors. Now, let's take a little look at the food which is eaten in hospitals around the world. So, for example, in Thailand, a typical meal in a Thai hospital could consist of some fried rice and a fried egg. In Korea, a hospital meal could have some fried wonton, kimchi, and seaweed soup. In Australia, a meal could consist of beans, chicken, and ice cream. And in France, a healthy alternative in a hospital would be oatmeal, bread, and cheese. Right, guys? Now, let's take a little look about what we just talked about. Get yourself a notebook and a pencil. Write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, look at the statements. Are they true or false? Or, if I didn't say anything at all, write NM for not mentioned, okay? I'm going to give you a couple of minutes and I will come back and check your answers. All right, yes, number 1 is true. An ambulance is a vehicle used to take a patient to the hospital. Number 2, a truck is the only vehicle that you can use to bring a patient to hospital. That's false, of course. You can use an ambulance, an air ambulance, a car, maybe even a motorbike. There are many different types of vehicle that doctors and staff use to bring patients to hospitals. Statement number 3. The emergency numbers always have 3 digits. And of course the answer is NM, not mention, because I didn't say anything about that in the lesson. Number 4. Doctor scrubs have many colors, and the answer of course is true. Originally in the past, doctor scrubs used to be typically blue or green, but nowadays they are rainbow colored, and they even come with some flowery designs and animal designs for children. And last but not least, number 5, hospital food around the world is the same. No, it's not. We have many different hospitals around the world, and they all serve different kinds of food, from Korea to France, from America to Australia. And here are the statements again with the answer key next to them so you can double check. Number 1 is true. Number 2 is false. Number 3 is not mentioned. Number 4 is true. And number 5 is false. Oh guys, look at the time. Now let's move on to science, the science part of our culture and science lesson. Now we are going to be taking a look at some common illnesses and what we can do when we have them. Now, with a common cold, you could experience a runny nose, a sore throat, maybe you could sneeze or cough sometimes, maybe all 4 together. But don't worry, because it's usually not too serious. Now, what can we do to help ourselves when we have a common cold? Well, the first thing, of course, is to get plenty of rest. The second thing is to drink plenty of water and try and eat as much fruit as you can, because in fruit we have lots of vitamin C, and that helps beat the cold. Now guys, let's fill in the table with the information from the text. Now, when you have an illness, you will have a particular problem or a feeling with your body. These are called symptoms. For example, a runny nose or sore throat. Now, advice is what you should do when you have symptoms. For example, if you have a sore throat, you should drink some warm water. And if you have a cold, you should rest. So I'll give you a minute or two to write the correct terms in the correct part of the table for symptoms and advice. After that, I'll come back and check your answers. Right guys, answers for symptoms and advice. For symptoms, we could have runny nose, sneezing and coughing. And for advice, take a rest, drink a lot of water, and eat more fruit. Okay guys, let's talk about headaches. Now, everybody can suffer from a slight headache sometimes, but it can be a real pain if you suffer from a bad headache frequently. When you have a headache, you can feel pain from one side or either both sides of the head. And in some cases, even a light noise can make the pain a lot worse. Putting an ice pack on the forehead is a good way to reduce the pain. You could also try to sleep or take an aspirin if you have a severe headache. So guys, take a look at the symptoms and the advice and fill in the table with the information. So put the symptoms in the symptoms part and put the advice in the advice part. I'm going to give you a minute or two to do that, and then I'm going to come back and check your answers. Okay? Okay guys, let's check your answers now. For symptoms, yes, you could have pain on one side or both sides of the head. That's the symptom. And for the advice, you could use an ice pack and put it on the forehead. Number 2, you could use some sleep. And number 3, you could take an aspirin. Another problem is indigestion. Now, sometimes if we eat too much food in one go, our tummies can have trouble digesting that. That is known as indigestion. Now, some symptoms of indigestion is nausea, cramps, and throwing up. Now, some ways we can help that is to drink some digestion tea or put a heat bag on for the pain. If our symptoms get worse and our problem doesn't get any better, it would be a good idea to go and see the doctor. Now, same again, symptoms and advice, only this time it's about indigestion. I'll give you a minute or so to write the correct information in the correct box. Okay, see you soon. Okay guys, for the symptoms and the advice, let's see what we put in which box. For symptoms, we had cramps in the tummy, we had nausea, and we had vomiting. For advice, we had drinking digestion tea, we had using a heat bag for the pain, we had not lying down, and we had going to see a doctor. How many did you get right? Alright guys, now you know about some common illnesses and what you can do to help them or prevent them. Now, I hope you know a little bit more about how to take care of yourself, and I'll see you again in upcoming episodes.